Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at your horoscopes for the month of November, and in particular we're going to be taking a look at the new moon in Scorpio that is happening later in November. It's a really interesting new moon because it's happening at the same time as a Mercury Cazimi, and the entire configuration of the new moon with Mercury at the heart of the sun is also opposite Uranus within a degree. So a very powerful new moon happening in the month of November that will also be part of the active Grand Water Trine. We're going to be focusing on that today with my content creation team. Kelsey, Emily, Mal, and Q will be with me in just a moment to break down your horoscopes sign by sign, given this major event happening later in November. So that's our agenda for today. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell for all of our updates so you know when everything is happening on the channel. Share a comment, that helps the algorithm find us. Hype us if that's a part of your menu options. Transcripts of any of these daily talks can be found on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. The end of the early bird enrollment for our year one course is taking place this week. You have until the 31st, which is Friday, to take advantage of the early bird rate for the first year program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, which begins November 15th. We have pushed the start date back by a week to give people more of a chance to sign up. The early bird rate was also extended to the end of the month. So you have until the end of this week to save on the cost of the course with the early bird rate. We have need-based tuition assistance for this program as well. So if you need a little bit of help to come study with us in the first year course, please do take advantage of that. That allows you to use a sliding scale. If you notice that the sliding scale still doesn't work, there's an option that says still need more assistance with a question mark. Just select that, and then we know that we can try to customize a plan for you that works in your budget if the sliding scale is still not accessible. So we've had some people ask about that. Make sure that if you use the tuition assistance, you pick a rate within that sliding scale. If that sliding scale still doesn't work for you, you're really, having a hard time, then please just click that still need more assistance. And then we know that we can customize something for you. So anyway, at the end of today's program, there's an informational video about the year one course that's tagged onto the end. You'll learn everything that you need to know about the program. This is our first year course in ancient Hellenistic astrology. I am super passionate about teaching this program, and it's probably, in my opinion, it's probably the best thing that I've created as a astrologer. One thing I want to tell you, every day I've been saying something about why I think it's worth studying astrology at Nightlight, and one of the reasons is the people that you're meeting here. Nightlight is very intentional as a community, as a school, about building the success of other astrologers. It's not just, come through and study our curriculum. It's come through, study what we have to offer and become successful. And we have so many different ways that we try to prop up our students through the affordable reading service, through bringing people on as content creators to help them build their own platforms. We're a school that really is going to have your back when it comes to building your success outside of our program, if your desire is to become a practicing professional on any level, part-time, full-time, whatever. So we're passionate about that. We really care. And I think that makes our program one of the most special programs out there. So come check it out. Hope to see you soon. All right, on that note, let's bring our team back to break down your horoscopes for the month of November. Kelsey, Emily, Mal, Q, hello, welcome back.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Yay. It's good to be back together. It's good to be out of eclipse season. That was wild. And I felt like every time something went through late Virgo, and then hit the opposition to Saturn and Neptune in late Pisces and early Aries, and then immediately hit those wild trines to Pluto and Uranus, it was like, whew, now we're like that whole dynamic has shifted. In November, we see Neptune back in Pisces. Uranus is going to retrograde back into Taurus. Pluto is moving in direct motion. Jupiter is going to turn retrograde. The Grand Water Trine is now flowing along. So the landscape of the astrology has shifted significantly this month. And what we're going to do is take a look, and ladies are going to break down your horoscopes. And we're focusing on this date here. This is, let me get myself situated here, and I'm going to cover up Q's face on accident. This is the new moon in Scorpio opposite Uranus. Now, this is taking place, depending on your time zone, late November 19th into the early morning of November 20th. This is our transit of the month that we are building your horoscopes around. You'll see that this is happening as we have had in the past several new moons at those last final anaretic degrees There's one, the anaretic degree is typically the last degree, but the bounds of the malefics are the last 2 to 3 degrees of the sign. So they're very potent degrees that often speak to, cycles that are going to be a little bit more intense. So these final degrees of Scorpio, where the new moon is taking place, you'll notice that at the time of the new moon, Mercury is Cazimi. Mercury is literally at the heart of the sun, within that 15-minute range, as the new moon comes through. That all of these planets, the new moon and Mercury, Cazimi, and Scorpio, are taking place within just 1 degree of an opposition to Uranus. Now, on the 19th, you're going to feel Mercury moving through that opposition in its retrograde, and then it sort of reactivates that opposition through the new moon, which then applies immediately to the opposition with Uranus. The moon will happen in a couple of hours, the sun within the next day. So if you want to spread this out from the 19th of November through like the 21st, those are the days within which you're really going to feel that strong Uranian oppositional tension. There's a lot of ways of thinking about Uranian oppositional tension, but one of them would be a cycle that starts off with an emphasis on the need to break free from established patterns. These established patterns, with the sign of Scorpio pulling in the opposite direction, may be deeply fixed emotional patterns, for example. They may be attachments that we have emotionally that are very deep and profound and give us a feeling of safety, and they're not easy to dislodge or let go of. And yet this cycle may tell us there's a different way of doing things, or there's a different experience of freedom, or a different kind of opening, or a revolution of circumstance that's asking us to allow for a process of transformation that we may feel suspicious about, or resistant to, or scared of. That would be common for a situation like this. The mind, ideas, thoughts, communication, insight, and a key moments of realization with Mercury at the heart of the sun that are truly Uranian, that cause revolutionary shifts in our life that aren't necessarily easy, but are coming from deep-seated emotional insight that's occurring at the time of the new moon. All of these would be things that wouldn't be surprising to see occurring. Now, what's going to make this unique is where this lands in your chart. A Uranian new moon cycle like this, with an opposition to Uranus, can activate 2 houses, therefore, at once in your birth chart. And the tension between the topics of 2 houses is inherent to the way that the language of astrology works. So what we're going to do for you today is think about what this Uranian cycle might look through, what these kinds of mental, emotional breakthroughs might look like, given the whole sign houses that are being activated. And remember that as this is happening, these planets are also in the background participating in a Grand Water Trine. Now, that Grand Water Trine is not exact, but the power of this Grand Water Trine is that it really emphasizes the element of water. Emotions, feelings, instincts, the body, the felt emotional connections with ourselves and others become a really pronounced part of this. So do things like healing. Water is often associated with cleansing, purifying, and healing experiences. So this is a very profound opening moment for a lunar cycle. And that's why we're focusing on it today. So all of that being said, in today's episode, Emily's going to be covering the fire signs. Kelsey's going to be covering the earth signs, Mal, the air signs, and Q, the water signs. And we're going to go through them one at a time, starting with Aries. Now, in order to get this situated here, I'm going to put Aries on the ascendant for starters. And then what I'll do is I will, as each of our host is talking about your horoscope, I will circle the house positions of the new moon and the opposition to Uranus so you know where to look. But that's where we're heading. You guys ready?
Yeah. We're ready.
Okay, awesome. So Emily is starting us off on fire signs. So what I'm going to do is Emily's got us starting with Aries rising, and I'm going to highlight here. You can see the new moon for Aries folks out there. You can listen to this, by the way, for your sun, moon, rising sign, whatever you prefer. We recommend your rising sign because that will correspond with the whole sign house version of your birth chart. Nightlight is a Hellenistic school of astrology. And so the whole sign house system is a part of the language of Hellenistic astrology. So for that reason, we just say, hey, look at your rising sign. It'll correspond exactly with your birth chart. But here we go. Regardless of which sign you're listening for, we have Aries on the ascendant to start us off.
Yeah. So with Aries, we've got this new moon with the Mercury retrograde Cazimi happening in your 8th house in Scorpio. And it's opposed to Uranus in the 2nd house in Taurus. One thing that I noticed for all of our fire signs here is that we are looking at a pairing of the moksha and arta houses. So the 8th house is the moksha house, having to do with the, a phrase that you often use, Adam, liberation from the world, right? Release of attachments. Whereas for Aries, Uranus is in the 2nd house. It's an arta house, having to do with materiality, the development of material resources that help to provide stability and happiness in a material sense in our lives. And I'm looking at Uranus there as, one of the key words for Uranus is also liberation. So to me, this combination of moksha and arta, material and liberation, freeing Uranian quality, this feels like there's a potential for a new seeding of some kind of release of attachment, release of material resources, goods, something like that, that might feel a little ouchy. These are, all of our water signs, the moksha houses here for fire risings, as Mal said last month, or the spooky houses, right? So there might be a little bit of heaviness or discomfort here. But one thing I'm thinking for Aries specifically, and I'm going to tell a little story about someone I know who's not an Aries rising, but who is a Scorpio rising, who has the part of fortune, which is a very lunar, moon-like thing, in the 8th house, and recently had a transit from Uranus to the part of fortune in the 8th. So it's a similar feeling archetypally. You've got moon, Uranus, 8th house. And their mother passed away a while ago. A few months after she passed, they were looking through storage unit and uncovered some documents that showed that there had been a child born and given up for adoption. And this was, revelatory. This person has a half sibling out there somewhere that they did not know about prior to this. And this feels like the kind of story that might have potential to be seen here with this new moon. That Mercury Cazimi is very revelatory. It's in the 8th house of connections with perhaps ancestors or the way that we're connected with people. This might be the kind of thing that comes up for our Aries, where we are now made aware of something. It feels very familial to me with that Jupiter and Cancer in the 4th house as well. So something with family, we're made aware of something that we can't unknow, that kind of throws us, it shakes us up a little bit around, okay, who are we now that we have this information? Who am I, especially for Aries? Such an independent, such a sign that leans into individuation and independence, to be having some of these questions of who am I when I am related to people and how I connect. I think low-hanging fruit here also, we might see, anything with inheritance, anything with debt, anything with loan. Jupiter in Cancer in the 4th house there, you might be buying a piece of property and you're taking on a mortgage, right? That could be a new moon, a new seeding point in an 8th house of all of those shared resources, debts, loans, inheritances, all of that. This could look like perhaps you work in the family business or something like that, and the older generation is retiring. And so you're taking on a new way that you're connected with people. Anything like that. Something to do with resources, how you see yourself in connection with other people, finding out information that's revelatory and new for you that you can no longer unsee or unknow. And then the process of what that is seeding for you or starting for you throughout this next lunar cycle and beyond, I think, for Aries.
Fantastic. Yeah. A couple of key words that come to my mind would be what kinds of resources, material, psychological, emotional, are changing. Like what do you have? What do you want? What do you need? What do you owe? And how are different attachments being relinquished so that different kinds of resources can be made available? Yeah, but really well done there. I like that one. Let's move on to Taurus. And
Alrighty.
Kelsey's taking our earth signs. I'm just going to highlight here. We've got the new moon forming in the 7th house opposite Uranus in the 1st.
So for Taurus and Taurus rising, this is happening in angular houses. So this could be impacting a lot of areas of life. And I also wanted to touch on the comma factor here of the 7th house. It is a house of pleasure. And, we do think of this house as relational, our one-on-one relationships, because they bring us a lot of pleasure, right? And, this house has a lot to do with what we seek, the desires that we have. And I know in Adam's talk on the 7th house, he spoke a lot about how the 7th house is literally where the sun sets. So this could be a lot about completions, culmination points, and endings. But endings can be very beautiful because they make room for new beginnings. And this is a new moon. I do think because it's at the end of the sign, a lot of us are going to be completing some things over really the end of this year. But this being the place of where the sun sets, I was thinking about how it represents, what we do when the sun sets, what we do in the end of the day, if you know what I mean. And what else do we do at the evening is usually we take an inventory of our day. We think about what went well, what didn't go well, and what we want to bring into the next day. So I was thinking about how, with Taurus and Scorpio ruling the 7th, sometimes Taurus people, you guys can be a little hard on yourselves. And, I'm not making any assumptions or judgments because I'm a Scorpio rising. So when I'm not aligned with my truth, I wake up like that. And I just noticed that in terms of the place of this house. So I was thinking about how maybe, because we are wired to focus on the negative as human beings out of survival, focusing on things that are stressful, us fixed signs, we kind of have to do a little extra work here to create new neural pathways and to learn to let go. So I was thinking about how you all might be releasing certain storylines that are fixed, maybe about relating or relationships. This being ruled by Mars in your 8th, it could be very deep in terms of going to a space of vulnerability and, making room for new desires to grow in their place. Because this is the place of relationships, it could really be an opportunity to revitalize a relationship by be opening up more and having a little bit more trust or feeling safer to be super honest with someone. And having this Mercury Cazimi happening at the same time, I was thinking about how the conjunction Mercury and Uranus happened May 24th. I remember because I was at Norwalk. And I think about what was seeding then about maybe a new beginning in relation to the body, because y'all are going through a big revolution of how you approach your life, how you take care of your body. And, when we change, our relationships have to change too. We have a lot of need to have the shifts that we make personally reflect out in our relationships. So maybe you're checking in on that. And I think too, this is, a lot about maybe attachment style for some, maybe moving from an anxious or avoidant place to a more secure attachment style in relationships. And maybe this is because you're navigating some more vulnerable material with partners. Maybe it's not about one specific person, but about how you want to relate to everyone in your life. And, with this having the Grand Water Trine involved, it's going to impact all of your social houses. And maybe this is like an awakening of a creative awakening inside with Mercury ruling the 5th too, about being more comfortable sharing what you love and what you find pleasurable. And I was thinking too, this is true for all signs, obviously, but I think especially for Taurus people, being in relationship can feel like a risk. And because true intimacy involves being exposed and being seen and to say your truth and be vulnerable and raw in front of another or in front of an audience, that can be something that feels risky. So maybe this new moon is an opportunity to let go of some fixed storylines around being more private, um, or being more vulnerable with certain people, can help you do that in other social spaces. Also, bringing in the Mars in the eighth house ruling this new moon, it could be about a karmic entanglement or some kind of financial endeavor with a tie to either the past or a tie to someone's resources in some way, maybe releasing something that's not as fulfilling so that you can embody something that is more aligned with that truth. And I think sometimes with Mercury Uranus, the things we discover are destabilizing, but exposing something that is more internal can really help us finish out revolution going on in the Taurus ruled area of our chart. So I'm thinking about that for you guys. I think that going within and really getting vulnerable can be a powerful conduit right now. And there might be even some creative projects. I know that this could literally be about creation of art or a child with your partner, maybe shifting the dynamics of relationships. I know one Taurus rising in my life who's going to therapy for the first time, and I'm just very excited for them because this opens the door for relationships to be deeper and more authentic. And one other Taurus rising I know, I just feel that with what they've shared with me, they're feeling a lot more willing to be open in relationships and releasing some older storylines that have kept them maybe a little bit more reserved in sharing or a little bit more um, hesitant to trust. And, I'm a Scorpio again, so no judgment. I think that the fixed signs here are getting the chance to really shift because, again, with some of the outer planets going back into the houses they once occupied, Neptune's back in Pisces, Uranus is back in Taurus, the context of life is shifting. And maybe it's something that you've wanted to renew, but now it feels more possible. So that's what I've got for you guys.
I love it. Yeah, I think one additional insight I'll add is when a partner or friend or intimate other has a moment of insight or a significant personal moment of change or growth, when someone else transforms, it can be very uncomfortable for Tauruses to have to potentially reconfigure or situate themselves and their own identity within the context of the newness that someone else is bringing forward. So I'm, as a Taurus rising myself, I'm thinking about this, for example, and going like, any time that my wife has gone through major significant personal shifts or changes, my immediate thought is like, oh, am I okay? Am I secure? Will I, do I need, because that's just like such a Taurus rising thing to think about. But there's an opportunity here for, if your partner grows, you can grow. May not be easy. Your partner may also grow because they have feedback to provide within the relationship that's not easy to hear, but can provide you with an opportunity for growth as well. If we can't grow each other somehow, then what are we doing? If it's only about staying secure and safe and stable or static, then a relationship would be unlike everything else in nature, which is always growing and changing. So just remaining open to how that change might come through, what ways you might be asked to grow based on how someone else is growing. Okay. That was great. Let's move on to Gemini. And Mal has air signs, and I'm going to highlight this new moon in Scorpio in the 6th house opposite Uranus. And by the way, Kelsey, that was just great. And so the opposition is in the 12th. Sorry, Mel, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, well, I'm excited for the air signs, and I think the air signs have some really interesting stories maybe opening up with this new moon in Scorpio. By the way, I was looking at the sort of sister moon at the beginning of May 2026. And by then, Uranus will be back in Gemini. That's for the full moon in Scorpio that will take place next Taurus season. So, kind of thinking about this new moon as an important one because it's kind of one of the last lunations that's really seriously talking to Uranus in Taurus before Uranus moves on. Now, for the Gemini risings, I'm looking at the sixth house as the place of our routines, but also I think about the sixth house as kind of like the place of the mind body connection. I think particularly Gemini risings might be paying attention around this time to how physical manifestations might come from more emotionally stressful situations. Like you get in a fight with your boss and then you break out in a rash, or, you keep going over and over the same argument with your partner and then you walk away with a headache. I actually think around this time, any physical symptoms that perhaps are rooted in more of like a fixity of our emotional patterns might be coming up to show us what is ready to be released or just even looked at in a new way. I'm also just generally thinking about disruptions to your routine and what that does to the Gemini rising, with the sixth house in a fixed sign. Maybe, you think, oh, Gemini risings, they're so mutable. They can just go with the flow, which can be true at times. And then in other places, like the sixth house, it's like, oh my God, like this disruption to my daily routine just feels so challenging. Maybe the office floods, maybe the boss needs to take a week off because of an emergency, and you don't really know exactly how to go about your work now. At the same time, this kind of reminds me of a yoga class that sticks out in my memory. We were all in kind of a beginning meditation, and there was some kind of disruption outside of the class. There was like a bunch of footsteps, or someone was trying to lift something, and it was clearly just a bunch of noise that was totally disrupting the class's meditation. And I remember the teacher acknowledged the noise and was like, let's just welcome in the sounds that we're hearing right now. And the minute she said that, I changed, because before I was thinking, gosh darn it, like this is supposed to be relaxing. This is supposed to be my routine. This is supposed to be where I'm supposed to meditate. These sounds are ruining it. But if we totally expect a perfect environment for meditation every time we sit down to meditate, then we're a little bit delulu, right? Life isn't a perfect environment for meditation. And, let that be a metaphor for this new moon in the sixth house. You're probably not going to have the perfect environment to meditate. You're not going to have the perfectly stable daily schedule. There's some kind of disruption that's challenging you to welcome it instead of viewing it as, such an imposition on your schedule. And I think if the Gemini risings are able to reach that place in the 12th house, Uranus has been working there since 2018. What has Uranus taught you about managing like these different subconscious parts of yourself that might want to control, that might want to grab on? How can you use what you've learned since 2018 with Uranus sitting there to also manage the disruptions that are coming in around the time of this new moon?
I love that. It's a great way of framing what can be very difficult or disruptive patterns that emerge in the 6th and 12th, especially when there's planets opposed across those houses. I feel like I don't know many people. Let's just use a little bit of an exaggerated story. I don't know many people who say to themselves, I'm leaving my corporate life. I'm leaving this trodden path that I've been on, that other people have been on, and I'm doing it because it's just a great Tuesday today. It never happens that way. When people decide to take a serious left turn, go off the beaten trail. What is it? The Robert Frost, take the trail less, the path less taken, or however that goes. It's usually because people start to see there's something seriously lacking in the way that I'm living life, or in how deeply it can satisfy me. So dissatisfaction, difficulties, hardships, the reality of suffering and impermanence, the toil and work of being alive. When we hit really important inflection moments with those qualities in life, they are frequently the ones when they add up, when they reach a breaking point. There's a hexagram in the I Ching, number 28, called critical mass, and it speaks to this exact situation where the burdens of life just get too much, and you go, "That's it. I'm going to Nepal. I'm going to drink ayahuasca. I'm going like." And it looks different, and we can all laugh because it's like it in a way, it's an archetypal journey that a lot of us have taken. We can recognize that. And it doesn't necessarily solve everything to radically change your life and go to Nepal. But the point is the inner shift that happens, right? It's a point of going like, I'm not going to keep slamming my head into the same wall and expecting a different result. I have to, something more radical has to shift. And I think that could be the case right now for Geminis, because of the load of the 6th and the 12th meeting in the way that they are. And that's a good thing, even though on the outset, it just looks like the ridgepole is sagging and critical mass is being reached. And that can feel on one level just like very destructive and chaotic. But on another level, like, I can't think of anyone who's decided to become a yogi that was just like, oh, just because it's a sunny day on Tuesday that they did it. It doesn't work that way. So this could be a really good thing, even if on the outside it looks like a chaotic or difficult thing. Okay, that was great. Thank you. All right, Q, you're queued up here, and we are going for the new moon in the 5th house, and it has this opposition to Uranus in Taurus in the 11th.
Yes. So my Cancer risings, this lunation happening in the 5th house of creativity, of joy, of children, childbirth, all things that come from like our spiritual alignment to what brings us internal happiness, and all that we create from there. It is one of the Dharma houses. So it is essential to like your spirit, right? Your spiritual reincarnated journey here. It is opposing Uranus in the 11th house of our audiences, of our hopes, dreams, wishes, the communities and people, our benefactors that support and uplift us and support us through that journey. So with Scorpio living in this like fertile, creative, eternal house of joy, it's interesting that we have Mercury and a Cazimi there, because this is bringing like a sharpness to your vision, to your creative communication style. So this could look like you all sitting deep with yourselves, going within and producing and creating, birthing something forth that could possibly shake up the foundations and communities and audiences, and that environments essentially that you've been moving in a particularly fixed manner, perhaps. It could feel quite limiting when you reflect back on all the like restraints that you're starting to feel as it affects the way that you create from this internal well of like self-knowing, emotional experience. It could feel quite vulnerable. Kelsey mentioned earlier that being in relationship requires a level of vulnerability, of transparency. And with all this energy happening in that 5th house, we have Venus there as well. There's this longing, this wanting to really like live your authentic truth. Scorpio energy is all about, piercing through the BS and like knowing what it is that you desire and going after it, even if it's taboo, even if it's a little like weird and on the outskirts of what people are comfortable with. What you write, what you communicate, what you create could build some tension. That's the opposition energy here. So it could be that Uranus and the energies and the communities that you are used to moving within is shaking away what is not true to you in your creative journey and expression. We have the Grand Trine, that water energy. So this is super emotional. So Cancers, cry it out if you need to, but get it down on paper, journal it out, dance through it, sing through it. You may also, because this is children, if you're a caregiver, a parent, you may see that your children are like boldly expressing themselves. And this brings new insight for you. This could be Uranian energy for you to reflect and be like, wow, is something beautiful and sacred about moving authentically in that Scorpio energy from the depths of who you are, that shakes up what's around you to get to a more aligned path of moving forward in this journey. I think Uranus being in this retrograde is giving us that final time to reflect before like it happens to us. So leaning in is going to be extremely cathartic. I think that this lunation is not a soft one, but we have so much like beautiful water energy to really help us heal and nourish our goals, our dreams, and ourselves, and those that we're in relationship with. There's going to be like an aspect of higher insight, knowledge, knowing of spiritual like self, and I think structure around your faith. It's not going to be like possibly religious, I would say. It could be, but it could be just more so like feeling more secure and grounded around the things you have faith in. With Saturn returning back to that ninth house, we got Neptune returning back to that ninth house as well. It's really providing you this last moment before it moves into Aries to really be like, okay, I feel secure in my beliefs, my philosophical understandings of who I am, what it is that I desire, what really brings healing and beauty and love and light and all this like beautiful Piscean energy that's sitting in that ninth house, really supporting you and being able to create what it is that you need to create in the fifth house authentically. It's going to feel uncomfortable because, again, Cancers care about community deeply and belonging. And that ties well into some of the attributes and the themes of the 11th house. So Uranus being there and opposing what it is that your spirit, your Dharma energy wants to create, needs to create, and like bring forth is going to be uncomfortable. Call on those who are close to you that understand the transition that you're going through, that you're expressing. Bring in, Scorpio's about a relationship. So it's just like you got some loyal ones with you who are going to be so about supporting these new creative ventures in this seeding moment for you. But allow what needs to kind of be shaken off your physical and like spiritual aura energy to allow it to fall and see what will flow in from this water Grand Trine. The waters are flowing, something will be flowing your way. Don't move and lag is really the energy here. Let yourself be transformed through your creative pleasures and callings with this, Cancers. Yeah.
I love that. I'll add that I think, for Cancers, thinking about the Grand Water Trine in your Dharma houses, a lot of what this might boil down to is embracing the truth of some of the more complicated parts of who you are. It's real sweet to be a Cancer. It's easy to include a little Piscean ninth house sweetness and sensitivity, the idealist, the compassionate, nurturing side of you. I think the first and the ninth is easy flowing for Cancers. The fifth house Scorpio part is the part of you, that's like, I like it rough. There's parts of me that have different needs and different tastes, desires, creative parts of myself that aren't as pretty, or they're more complex, or they are pretty, but maybe you just don't think they are. That's what I'm getting at. And this could be a moment of getting in touch with that personal truth that's about your creative essence, that's about your pleasure, that's about your desire body, that maybe you don't think has as easy a time fitting into the world socially or publicly. But I think let's call it the creative, freaky side of you has to be audacious enough to come out and be seen and threaten to disturb certain norms in your life, certain conventions socially or publicly, in order to be happier. So that's kind of the way that I'm reading this. I'm dovetailing, of course, off from a lot of what Q already said, but yeah, that's how I'm seeing that one. Thank you, Q. That was awesome. Let's move on. We're circling back around to Emily for our fire signs, and Leos have this new moon configuration in the fourth house with the opposition and the Mercury Cazimi hitting Uranus in the 10th.
Yeah. So the fourth house, such a place of, kind of privacy. It's a private place. It's a behind closed doors kind of place. It's the resting place of the moksha houses, right? And Scorpio as a sign tends to feel somewhat private, tends to hold its cards close to its chest. There's a slowness, a like kind of quiet processing. That's all about depth with Scorpio. And in this place at the bottom of the chart, this very private place. Because of that, I wanted to bring in, I know Mal mentioned the sister full moon that's happening in May of 2026 to this. I wanted to mention the lunar phase families with Leos in particular, or the lunar gestation cycle is another way that it's referred to. I won't go into total depth. I don't want to take too much time explaining it. Maybe I'll hop into the comments when the video is published and explain that a bit. But how it works is that it's more like a 27-month cycle. And you can do this with any new moon. The new moon here is at 28 degrees of Scorpio. In 9 months' time, there will be an opening square first quarter moon where the moon is at or around 28 degrees of Scorpio when the sun is in Leo. And then 9 months after that, there will be a full moon when the sun is in Taurus and the moon is in Scorpio at or around the same degrees. So the reason I'm bringing this in for Leo specifically is because that opening square moon within this lunar phase family 9 months from now is happening in August 2026, 1 week after you will have had a total solar eclipse in your first house at 20 degrees of Leo. And so because this is this private place, this slow moving, kind of holds the cards close to the chest, this new moon, Mercury Cazimi happening now this month in November of 25 in your fourth house, I'm wondering if something isn't being slowly seeded in the depths in this private space that will not be seen outside to other people for a while, but come, right after you've had that solar eclipse in your first house next August, a week later, we have this opening square moon. There's a moment of adjustment. There's a moment of choice point. There's a turning point in the storyline that's being seeded right now. So I just encourage you, Leos, to kind of give that the longer time frame look. Just kind of see what's starting right now that feels very private or behind closed doors for you, that might have some kind of turning point or next point in the storyline that then feels very personal. After that solar eclipse that happens. Now, to rein it back in a little bit, I'm thinking my son, who's 12 years old, is a Leo rising. This could be something very simple, like that's happening for either myself or my husband, right? That's like a change that's happening for family that then changes how he is seen or known in the world, something like that, like maybe it comes out that his mom is a crazy astrologer lady, right? Oh, what's that? No, I'm just kidding. Everybody knows. I wear my freak flag pretty well already, but something like that, right? This could be a change in the workplace with that Uranus up there in the 10th house. You're going to start working from home, right? The new moon in the fourth house, it's something like that. This could be to do with property, with family, anything that's starting here that might have a feeling like something publicly is being shaken up with that Uranus there in the 10th house, in career, in reputation, in public visibility. And that creates this kind of slow seeding point in the more private sectors of our lives for Leos.
Awesome. Yeah, I was thinking how many times in my counseling career I've seen people relocate because they want a different quality of life. And it's almost as though there's no way to embody a new way of life than to both relocate and change jobs. The relocation gives you this new root system in the sense of being a different person on the inside. And then there needs to be some mirroring on the outside with a new job that takes place in the new location. It doesn't have to be that literal, though. It can be I'm working from home, and thus I get to the private and public part of my lives get to be less opposed to one another. But maybe in those first few months, I have to go through the difficult process of figuring out where in the house I can create that compartmentalization and separate space for the work. But whatever the case might be, it's the inner and the outer and how the two are remodulating one another right now. So that's the way that I'm looking at it. I really appreciate that. That was really good. Okay, so we're moving along. Hold on just a second. Let me get my shift here. So we have Virgo rising, which places this new moon into the 3rd house, and we're going to oppose Uranus in the 9th. Kelsey, what do you think?
All right. So for Virgo rising, with this placed in the 3rd house, this is the joy of the moon. So I do think that this will be a very beautiful lunation cycle as it plays out. It might be a little dicey in the beginning just because there are some shakeups with Uranus here. This place is usually referred to as a place of communication. It can include siblings, neighbors, local trips. I like to keep it simple and call it the place of the familiar. All things that you have familiarity with and the conditioning. I know Adam likes to call this the fishbowl that we swim within. And so for Virgo people, I'm thinking about Scorpio occupying this house, and maybe the fishbowl is a little murky. Maybe it's a little mysterious, and maybe there are some sea monsters there, but are they perceived sea monsters? I think they might be, because luckily we can clean fish bowls, especially a Virgo. So I do think that something is happening here in the higher mind with Uranus in the 9th, maybe impacting your conditioning, the way that you approach your interests, the way that you approach communication in your social world and your environment. This could be a place that just has to do with yearning to understand, because astronomically, it used to occupy the 4th house, but fell away. And, it just wants to seek some roots. But luckily, we can't stay the same. Thank goddess, right? And this is the house of the goddess. So I'm thinking about how the moon changes face, and so do we. And I think about Scorpio ruling this place as a very emotionally charged, perhaps a little ruminating or fixated mind. This is the place of the mind, and how that translates out into our social dynamics. I'm thinking about the familiar in your life perhaps being shaken up by a new belief or a shift in your beliefs, or maybe some new information coming into your world that has you shifting your beliefs and having a paradigm shift of some kind. This could be about trying to cultivate and express something that you've been maybe wanting to find the words for, but now something's going on in your environment or in what you're learning and focused on that's allowing you to do that. I'm thinking about also this as a karma house, and how it is a pleasurable experience to be who we are and to be able to express ourselves from a place of truth. And I'm thinking about letting go of some control here, which can be daunting for a Virgo person, but I know you can do it because you have Scorpio here. You can transform in this house, and it's maybe about letting some old beliefs die so that new interests can shape and take a hold of maybe what you're interested in, what you want to learn. Also, with the new moon being ruled by Mars in your 4th house, maybe this is about releasing a tether to the past or to some conditioned patterns that you've had from family. And maybe something's happening in your environment that's maybe encouraging you in a way that feels maybe a little uncomfortable, but also kind of freeing, because this place in the zodiac is about shifting and changing and adapting. And I'm thinking about how some of you may be realizing it's safe to change simply because it's time. And maybe there are new interests and new ways you want to express yourself that are now going to be possible as you see this cycle through. So yeah, that's what I have for you guys.
Awesome. I think you covered everything that had been on my mind for that one too. So I'm just going to roll along to Libra, and Mal is going to take the next air sign here with the new moon forming in the Mercury Cazimi in the 2nd, opposite Uranus in the 8th.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, with the 2nd house tending to relate not only to our income, but maybe our skill sets and our gifts and our talents, and how we bring those gifts and talents into the world. And I'm thinking, I mean, I know maybe 2 or 3 Libra risings at this point who have gotten a new job in the last chunk of time. I think this relates to a lot of things, especially Jupiter coming from the 10th house and trining this second house of income. But I'm thinking about how there's kind of a level, maybe before this new moon, there's some kind of maybe boredom, like I'm bored of this, or I've mastered this skill, or this job is boring now because it's easy, and it used to not be easy, but now it is because I've learned everything that I needed to learn in this situation. And now that the Libra rising has, quote unquote, taken the new job, whether that be metaphorically or literally for some Libra risings, I'm thinking about the challenges of the new job and the price of leaving the old place that was easy and boring. And now the new place requires a new skill that likely leaves us feeling a little bit uncomfortable, maybe even a bit insecure. There's security in being bored in a way, because you know what to expect and you know what's coming around the corner. So now that there's this new opportunity that's putting you in this fixed pool of discomfort, it's almost like you're challenging yourself to grow in the level of confidence you have with your own skill set. And my advice to the Libra risings is give yourself time to learn not only the new skill, but the new emotional landscape that is coming in. It's kind of, honestly, it's kind of immature to expect ourselves to be perfect at this new thing right away. And I think there's something about this new moon that's saying, let yourself not be perfect. Let yourself try this out. Let yourself grow. Let yourself ask questions, especially with that Mercury Cazimi there. Mercury loves to ask questions. So as you grow in confidence with this new thing, be easier on yourself than maybe your ego is, telling you, and try not to be so hard on yourself as you really grow and thrive into this leveling up.
I think one way that I would look at this would be what new resources are coming into your life right now, and how are the whether it's money, time, energy, or some revision or reconsideration of how you earn or spend material assets or immaterial assets like energy, time, emotional investment. And as you're reconsidering those things and what best sustains or supports you, that is going to have a ripple effect into other relationships and the contracts that you carry with other souls. So that's how I would look at that. I love that horoscope. That was just fantastic. Let's move along to Scorpio. Q's going to take us with this one. We have that new moon, and I'm just going to actually back this up by a day artificially so that we still get everything in that house. But here's the new moon forming in the first for Scorpios opposite Uranus in the seventh.
Ooh, yes, yes. Hello, Scorpios. So this new moon is clearly going to be personal for y'all, like personally felt within the body, the spirit, the soul, and it's going to feel like deeply cathartic as far as it concerns your relationships. It's hitting your seventh house, where it's at that dire degree. So this is like Uranus retrograding back into your house of relationships, and it's hitting that Mercury Cazimi. So your truth, you're speaking it straight from the spirit, straight from the heart, and it will be deeply felt not only by you, but everything that you're actually in relationship with, whether that be romantic, friendship, partnership, as far as like collaborations, work, business. It's going to, like, this Uranian energy is going to shift the way you view partnership. You could be meeting people who bring a Uranian energy to your relationships and shifts the way that you view yourself being in a relationship moving forward. The way that you're expressing yourself from that first house with the new moon in Scorpio is completely transformative, but it's going to remind you that to have this transformation take place, it's going to take a little bit of you letting go of the control that Scorpio likes to have, that Taurus also likes to live within. It is shaking up the security that you like to try to keep within your relationships. So it could be that your friend, your partner, your business partner, your business even, is letting you know that like, hey, there's some hard truths that like I'm experiencing on this end that shakes up and transforms the way that you view yourself. But it's very likely also that you're going to feel compelled to communicate the like piercing downloads that Mercury Cazimi is bringing you. And you're going to be risking like Uranus shaking up like whatever is false in your relationship house, whatever is living there, ideologies, pleasures, patterns of habit, because we got Taurus energy there. So if you're overindulging in something or restricting yourself from something, Uranus is going to come in there and shake it up and really question, like, is this really what you want? And do you think this will pass the test of time? Because we also have Saturn at play. Again, we can't forget that Grand Water Trine, especially for the water risings. This energy is deeply felt and flowing through those houses, those Dharma houses for you. So rely on Jupiter's ability to like bring nourishment from that ninth house. That like knowing of self, higher insight, you'll be feeling that so deeply and wanting to nourish yourself, nourish those that you're in relationship with, in the relationships that you have, but it'll come from like such a piercing truth that is revolutionary. It's going to be jaw dropping, the things that you're creatively kind of bringing forth from the insight that you have of a sense of self. Your desires and the things that you hold as boundaries for how you self-care and are in relationship with yourself will inevitably bring new opportunities for you with Uranus there after you've kind of made space by letting go of what's no longer serving you. I know some Scorpio risings that are going through deep transformations within their communities, within their friendships, and the personal truths that they're having to sit with themselves and whether or not they're going to come forth and share those truths. And how do they do that without that Mars energy kind of just like demolishing everything, the potentiality of something being continued after the truth has come forth. I think that that's why it's good to kind of lean into this water energy and realize that we're all emotional beings, some more expressive and more tapped in than others. So yes, while having these communications with those that you are in relationship with, I think that it'll just be good to acknowledge that this, I explained it to somebody as like, this is going to feel like a cyst, like the cyst moment in your relationship. And like the pus has to come out. Sorry if I'm like freaking people out, but like that moment where you got to like tend to the cyst because a bunch of the stuff got to come out. And finally this moment, the Grand Trine, this opposition is like bringing that pus out. And you now have to like instill a skin regimen to make sure that that doesn't get infected, that it heals well. You ain't got no dark spots, no discoloration, pigment, all that. So like you are doing intentional work with self and with other to make sure that you're healing through this process. That it's not just like grieving for grieving's sake and you're just like suffering and then it gets gross and pussy again. You are addressing the issue, you're applying pressure along with the universe, getting the crap out of the way, and then you are instilling the right salves and balms that you need from Jupiter and Cancer to really make sure that there's ascension through all that you're experiencing with this lunation. So with Scorpios, go forth, be strong, be kind to self and other, but be so thoroughly authentic and true to what it is that you are spiritually just supported and revitalized by. Yeah, that's what I say for Scorpio.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's funny to imagine how I'm obviously Taurus rising, so just considering what it might look like in reverse. And I really feel like it could be as simple as where the insight or change is coming from. If it's coming from your partner, that has a direct impact on you as a Taurus. If it's coming from you, that may have a direct impact on your partner or relationship. It's sort of the same thing, but I really wouldn't be surprised to see Tauruses getting the change more so from what's happening in someone else's life, whereas the Scorpios are more of the ones producing the change within the relationships. That could be an oversimplification because honestly, I could see it going both ways, but I would pay attention to that distinction with these two signs. Anyway, thank you, Q. That was wonderful. Let's go along to Sagittarius. We'll circle back around to Emily, and we will take the new moon in the 12th, placing it opposite Uranus in the 6th.
Yeah, I love, Q, that you said that this is not like a soft lunation. This is not an easy one. The energy has that kind of fixed scorpionic quality for sure. And in the 12th house, this Again, one of those spooky houses. This one, I think, is one of those that on paper, circumstantially, it might look a little like, oof, you know? But I think there is so much on offer here. What I'm really thinking of for Sagittarians with this new moon, Mercury Cazimi in the 12th, is the beginning of a new therapeutic modality, right? The beginning of depth work, the beginning of any kind of modality that's like a healing therapeutic work that is like, it's time to pop that pimple, right? It's time to let the pus out. But it's got to be released. It's got, that feels like there's real potential here for Sagittarians. Opposed Uranus in the 6th house, this could be instigated by, a breakdown at work, right? Or something like that. You're like, I've got to start getting my mental, emotional, psychological health in order because I'm no longer functioning in my day-to-day in a way that feels good to me, in a way that is, efficient. This could be some kind of disruption that happens in your everyday, like Mal was saying when she was talking about the Gemini risings, right? This is the opposite axis here. I really have been thinking in general with this whole lunation of the myth of Pandora's box. It feels like with basically every traditional planet somehow involved, Mars is not in one of these signs, but it's ruling the lunation. We've got Venus co-present. This is kind of like such an overwhelming moment with all of the gods and goddesses in the sky. This feels to me like the new moon is those moments after the box has been opened and Pandora freaks out and tries to closes the box, and what's left inside but hope, right? And this is Sagittarius we're talking about. These are people who need hope. These are people who need meaning. These are people who like live on that like tiny kernel of optimism that stays within their heart. So I think that this is that moment of like, maybe there's overwhelm in our experiences and our emotions and our psychological state. Maybe there's overwhelm, but there's this seed being planted deep down. It's a new healing modality. It's a new way of looking at the world. It's a removal into a place of isolation for a moment to plant some seeds of hope that we can move forward, and we will. So I think that's what's on offer. It sounds I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, and I apologize, but I think that's what's on offer for our Sages is like a seed of deep hope that's going to take time to grow, but is there and is going to keep you going. That's what I've got for you, Sagittarius.
Perfect. I don't have anything to add to that one. I really liked where you went with that, and I think it, again, like any of the signs, it's similar to the Gemini horoscope, where it's like the crisis of the 6th and 12th house can be one that puts you on really fruitful new paths in life. And so you have to there's a faith that's required for 12th and 6th house oppositions.
Yeah.
Let's go to Capricorn next. We have the new moon in the 11th opposite Uranus in the 5th.
All right. So for Capricorn rising, this new moon is located in the 11th house. And I think of this house as dreams, not the ones while you're asleep, the ones that you have while you're awake. This is the place of good spirit, aspirations for the future, communities, social interactions, and how, maybe friendships are what create that community for you, or maybe it's your work environment. So I think that, honestly, this could be about the pleasure you derive from being in community and maybe what makes your wishes feel fulfilled. Maybe that has to do with ultimately being seen in a certain way, and what work you are doing behind the scenes, with Mars ruling this new moon, also being your exaltation ruler as a Cap rising, in the 12th house in Sag. So maybe there are some things here that need to be let go of, or need to be processed, maybe in solitude. Maybe there is something here where there are shifts happening in your communities, and that might feel like a loss or something that is something you need to process in your solitude. But in that solitude, you are having maybe creative awakenings about what is possible next. Even though this may feel like a shakeup, what happens when things shake up? I mean, we've mentioned it a bunch today that really we only really shift when something is making us shift as human beings, especially in the fixed houses. So I'm thinking about the liberation that is possible in terms of how you show up in friendships, in your community, when you allow something to fully have that death and rebirth. I know that's a quarter jar term for Scorpio, but I do think that that's what November is all about for a lot of us, is allowing that full process of decay and then that regeneration that comes from this Mercury Cazimi. When it's the inferior conjunction, it's happening internally, and there are things maybe you're really realizing that have to do with your higher beliefs, with Mercury ruling the ninth. This could have to do with how you take care of yourself, with Mercury ruling the sixth. But I do think also with Saturn and Mars being the two rulers for Capricorn, y'all don't mess around. You are serious. You mean business, and discipline is very important. So maybe some of this is about letting go of the need to maybe have order and just let things be messy a little bit. And then maybe from that, you can show up still having some elements of mystery, because the 11th house with Scorpio, I know y'all enjoy that, but it could also be from a place of more vulnerability, just from the work that you're doing behind the scenes. Pulling your energy inward and working hard on something in solitude is something I could see for you guys. And maybe this impacts a larger dream that could come out from the work you're doing now that you're seeding. Maybe some Cap risings are looking for a way to reset the nervous system, and maybe this is also work that you do. Maybe some of the work you do in the world has to do with therapeutic processes. But yes, I think deep inner work right now can impact your ability to get things done and show up in your communities, and join new allies with a shared vision that is rooted in something that you are discovering right now about maybe your creative process and what you actually derive joy from. Maybe that is shifting from what is changing in your communities. I think that's all I have.
Great. I love it. For the sake of time here, since we're getting close to the end of our time that we have available to us today, I will move on to Aquarius, and we will look at the new moon in the 10th opposite Uranus in the 4th.
Yeah, what a profound new moon for you, Aquarius rising. This hitting the 10th house of kind of public reputation, but then Uranus also sitting in the 4th house of origins and roots. And I'm thinking about Uranus as Prometheus, the very rebellious Titan who secretly gives fire to the humans. And I'm thinking about this rebel sitting in that 4th house of origins. It's possible that this new moon helps the Aquarius risings maybe finish up some karma that has to do with like a sort of differentiating, let's say, away from the family of origin, whether that be ancestral stories that are rooted in old wounds, or maybe some sort of patterns that are displayed, especially emotional patterns displayed by parents that you want to now work through and transmute. And I could see the Aquarius risings really coming to terms with how much they've grown since 2018, how much they've maybe taken on that rebel black sheep archetype in that 4th house of the family. And now how it's maybe paying off in that 10th house of public reputation. There's a new seed being planted. And there's something kind of interesting here. It's almost like I'm making a choice that my father or my mother would not have made. Or like I'm making a career shift that isn't necessarily being given the thumbs up by my family, or I'm just making some bigger decision, or even like coming out as having wounds and trauma, that can also be kind of triggering to our family of origin, right? Because it's so shameful. We better keep it secret. Well, there's some secret, in the 10th house that it's kind of being let out in some way. I think the phrase is our secrets keep us sick. And I'm thinking about how the Aquarius risings could really just kind of be refusing maybe some kind of narrative, inherited narrative about keeping quiet, keeping secret, not changing, and instead choosing change and revolution and rebellion, even though, it may cause a little drama. At the same time, I think it's part of the path. And this is especially true with Pluto beginning the transit through the first house of the self and identity through the next 20 years or so. So I'm interested to see how this manifests for the Aquarius risings.
Yeah, I apologize. I had to use the astrological bathroom. It's always like the worst when you're like right in the middle of a recording and you're like, if I don't go, I'm going to die. Speaking of opposite Uranus. So anyway, sorry for stepping out for a second, but the only thing I would add here is that to me, the 10th house shift can be looked at really through the ongoing work that Pluto is doing in your first house as an Aquarius. The shift of identity and real deeper exploration of who you are, what makes you powerful or relevant versus what does so more publicly or professionally. And those two things aren't always the same, but there's maybe some conversation between self-empowerment and professional or public empowerment that's happening for Aquarians. Anyway, last but not least is Pisces with the new moon in the 9th opposite Uranus in the 3rd.
Yes, my lovely Pisces. We have the new moon happening in your 9th house, opposing Uranus in that 3rd house. So we're looking at themes of vision, of insight, philosophy, being renewed. But digging deep first and like finding or even downloading, actually, with Mercury having that Cazimi, where you're getting like day-to-day downloads of your belief systems shifting, changing, going through, like Kelsey said, a decaying process and being transformed, and a letting go, a releasing of previous beliefs that don't fit you anymore. And that could be because there's something that is happening in that 3rd house, or it could be that with these changes happening in the 9th house, that the 3rd house is being affected and your day-to-day is looking different. The way that you are wanting to have spiritual experiences change from day-to-day. The familial areas or places and people that you engage with, or where you take in your knowledge of life and gather your wisdom, changes in a dramatic way. And it definitely is tied to, I believe, just like like Adam touched on previous with Cancer, your more seedy, like private thoughts. These philosophies that kind of ruminate in the subconscious mind that you don't bring forth, they are like saying, baby, speak up. Like, they put the loudspeaker on and shout it from the rooftops, the spiritual downloads and truths, the philosophies and understandings of life and the experiences that you're having from an emotional place. What are they, and how can you share that? And also provide that insight that you've gained from your journeys to others as well. Because the 9th house is also like this sagey house where it's like you go to mentorship in the 9th house. You find your mentors, you find those who guide you to the wisdom that you seek before you reach the state of like being a master at your craft in the 10th house. So you are going through experiences that are transforming you on a very deep emotional, conceptual, philosophical level that is positioning you to move into this place of like deep knowing and being able to provide that support for those who haven't gone through that intense journey yet. Scorpio in the 9th house, you're going to be able to come on, folks, hop on. I'll ride you through and keep your hands in because it is a bumpy ride. It's going to get a little scary, but I'll lead you through because I've been here. I know this. I think that is going to be really interesting, seeing how Saturn and Neptune in your first house really help instill that intuitive, like mystical knowing of self, and how that affects that 9th house and the ability to continue to dig and like peel away those layers and find Scorpio, and they're like, okay, I'm getting to the core of it all. We're getting very, very to like the basics of like your self-knowing, and having that heal you in a creative way, because again, we have Jupiter and Cancer in that 5th house. So creativity will also be a part of this. What you're producing and birthing forth will again lend towards how you heal other people, how you create containers of nurturance and security and safety and community from that 5th house, based off of the insight and knowledge that you're gaining from your emotional adventures that are bringing you wisdom of self and other. So I think that that's like a really, really beautiful energy, but it's going to be very disruptive, I would say, in your day-to-day life. It could be that you are really drastically trying to reposition how you are moving and what you surround yourself in. Like Kelsey was saying, that water, the fishbowl, got to be cleaned out, because you are now privy to some things that you were maybe allowing to slide before, but you're like, I can't operate this way. And the water has to be like refined, refreshed, swashed out for something fresh and new. So yeah, Pisces risings, again, go forth, be strong. We got this.
Love that. I can't help but feel like the emphasis on the Dharma houses, especially 9 and 1 in this case, speak to realities that you can't avoid, that you have to somehow be held accountable to or take responsibility for, and how radical and positive it can be to own up to something that's true, that isn't easy, but that's real, and that will have maybe a lot of benefits and blessings that can come in if we go, yep, this is a truth that I can't avoid, and I have to somehow incorporate into my life. And it might require some kind of emotional or mental growth, emotional, intellectual growth, the ability to change perceptions or shift your understanding of something. Anyway, that was a fantastic horoscope cue. Thank you for that. We have reached the end of our recording today. I want to tell you how you can get in touch with all of our hosts today. I'm just going to run through their socials and the places you can find them, get in touch, get a reading. Kelsey is at Metanova Girl on Instagram, and then you can follow her there for astrology updates. I believe there's some links in her profile and bio.
Yes.
And then is it astrologyrx.com?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. So that's the website. On the website, you can book a reading. Is that right, Kelsey?
Yes, you can.
Awesome. And then at Emily T Astrology on Instagram is where you can find Emily. And then emilytatimer.com is the website. Do I have that right?
That's right.
Just double checking. And people can follow Emily for astrology content on Instagram, obviously book a reading and things like that on her website too.
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Please
and
do.
then,
Come see me.
yeah, totally. Emily did student readings for us for a really long time as well. Let's go to Q at Sensual Noir on Instagram. And then that is going to be connected to, through your profile, people can find all of your links to book. Is that right?
Yes, yes. Head on over to the profile, y'all.
Yes. Is there any website, or is it just that?
It'll have the website in the bio. So
okay,
there.
perfect. Yes. Yep. Okay, awesome. And then Mal is at _Mallory Hasty on Instagram, where you can find all of Mallory's good astrology content. And then remind me, what's the website?
Website is exactly the same, just malloryhasty.com, and you can find the link on Instagram. So
okay, perfect. I think last time I just referenced that and I didn't have an actual link to the website. So go to at _Mallory Hasty, click on the bio, you'll be able to find all of Mallory's good stuff there. Did I miss anything, guys?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you everybody for listening. We're hopeful that these horoscopes, our goal is to key in on the biggest transit of the month and give you the most relevant information in terms of the archetypes, the themes, the topics that you are most likely to encounter in that month ahead. With the new moon, keep in mind that although we talked about the 19th through the 21st of November as a little sweet spot, a new moon cycle can ripple out over the course of about 30 days. And so you may notice these things sort of spreading out from late November through about mid-December. It would not be a surprise to see that at all. So yeah, especially considering Mercury's retrograde, and we'll come back through that opposition to Uranus one final time. So yeah, we can't wait to come back in December. We'll have more horoscopes for you at the close of the year. It's hard to believe that we're already getting to that point. Yeah, it really is. Well, anyway, that's it. We will sign off after I say goodbye right now. We say goodbye. There's an informational video about the year 1 program. Come study with us. Don't let the price be an issue. The early bird sale ends this week, so that may help you, but also need-based tuition assistance is there. So if you need to work within a sliding scale, and if that sliding scale is too much, there's a little part that says need more assistance. Just click on that. We can always customize something for you if you're, some people are hurting more than others. So we try to make sure that our sliding scale includes a typical range, but if you need a little extra help, we're here to make sure that happens. So I hope to see you at the upcoming program. And on that note, we will sign off now. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. This is our first year course in Hellenistic astrology, and it begins again this November. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the course, the format of the course, and how to register. So let's go ahead and get into it. What is this course about? Well, if you are not familiar, ancient Hellenistic astrology is the earliest and original form of horoscopic astrology. All of the subsequent forms and schools of astrology that have existed over thousands of years come from these philosophical and theoretical roots. And so what you're doing when you study Hellenistic astrology is you're going back to understand the why behind absolutely everything. Why were there ever such a thing as houses and signs in the first place? How were the planets ever assigned to rule various portions of the zodiac in the first place? How do you use the categories of essential dignity, and why were they ever created in the first place? If you're someone like me, you like to know the why behind things, because once you understand the why, then you know how to use things more intuitively. So really the point of Hellenistic astrology, in my opinion, is not so much about going back and becoming a traditional astrologer or just being traditional for the sake of being traditional, as much as it is about grasping the roots of the entire system and paradigm. When you understand those roots, you have more intuition and understanding, which allow for you to be much more artful and fluid in the way that you speak the language of astrology. We call this class Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic because while it is about going back to understand the philosophical, theoretical, technical roots of the tradition, it's also about fluidly bridging those things with modern astrology and all of its most unique contributions. For example, modern astrology has given us so much psychological depth and personal depth. And so in a modern astrological setting, you're going to get the ability to explore your own character, your own psychology, and you're going to be able to utilize astrology for a process of healing and personal transformation. But when you pair that with ancient astrology, and it's almost like predictive karmic analytics, you really have a full toolkit to work with. And so that's also a great mission of ours at Nightlight, is to bridge ancient and modern forms, which is why we call the program Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. So that's just a little kind of overview of the program. If you want to know more about the specifics of the curriculum and of the syllabus, what I encourage you to do is go over to nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses page, go to the first year course, scroll down, and you'll see this over 12 months you'll learn about. And here you're going to see more of a detailed breakdown of the curriculum itself. I can promise you that if you've studied astrology in modern context, but you've never gone back to the ancient roots, while some of these topics may look familiar to you and you go, oh, I've already learned about that. Unless you've studied them from the Hellenistic perspective, I guarantee that you are not going to be familiar with this content. Hellenistic astrology is mind-blowingly new and interesting for most people. And if you've never studied it, again, don't assume that anything on this list is something you're going to be familiar with. In that way, the program is really ideal for a variety of different people. And I'll say more about that in a second. So what is the format of the course? Let's go to that next. Scroll down and you're going to see that the course includes 30 online webinars that I lead throughout the year. Over the course of a year together, I have 30 classes that are broken into different units of material. In between those classes, we have breakout study sessions with your course director and 2 TAs. They're going to lead you through Q&A sessions and tutoring sessions to make sure that you have a lot of support in between major units of study. In addition, we also have an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions year-round and get an answer within a business day in the student forum, where a lot of people also connect and build community. Lots of people in that forum also develop like little meetup groups outside of class. That's very common in all of our programs. It's a very community-loving, warm space where anyone's also welcome. Throughout the course, you're also going to find that for every lesson, if you're just there as a hobby student, you can just listen to the webinars. They're all recorded for you. So if you can't make the live webinars, everything is housed on the website as recordings. I'd say about 40 or 50% of our students are going to be following along at their own pace, whereas the other half might be attending the live webinars. But it's really kind of, if you can attend a few and then 1 week you got to be gone, the recordings are always there. You have lifetime access to everything in the course, so it's not a big deal. For every lesson as well, if you're someone who wants to go really, really deep, maybe you have the intention to practice professionally, this course is set up with an optional certification exam at the end from our school, from our program. So you can, if you want to build that resume and develop the credentials from our programs, you can do that, but it's optional, so you don't have to. And outside of every lesson, we have recommended reading. We have supplemental bonus content, all of which is optional, but it's there for people who might want a lot more, whereas some people will take the webinars themselves, and that'll be plenty. So it's really flexible in that way. Also, this is one program within 4 years of curriculum that are meant to go together. And so most people who come through our first year program will end up taking our second year program, where we develop forecasting and prediction and transit tracking techniques. Our third year program, which is aimed at counseling and psychology. So psychological counseling skills is our third year program. And then the Oracle Within, which is our exploration of the philosophical, spiritual roots of the divinatory oracular tradition of astrology. So there's a lot of material there. We also have another 1-year program in horary astrology for some people who want to add that predictive tool to their toolkit. So there's just a lot of material at Nightlight that this class is actually just one part of, which can be taken standalone, or for some people, they get into it, they're going to love it. You're going to hang out with us for 3 or 4 years worth of content. This program is ideal for a number of different types of students of astrology. I'll say that for starters. So let's see here. I'll stop sharing this. So we have there's a profile of the typical students who come through our courses. One is going to be people who just want a very guided introduction to ancient astrology because you've never had it before. Maybe you're only familiar with modern, and you want that guided, structured approach to learning traditional for the first time. Also, people who are brand new to astrology in general, there's no better place to start than at the roots of the ancient foundations. So whether you're a total beginner or just a beginner to Hellenistic, this is a great place to start. If you are someone who's been around astrology for a long time, but you've never had a guided, structured approach to Hellenistic astrology, again, this is a great place to start. I promise you, Hellenistic is very different than what you're familiar with, and you're going to need a guided and structured approach at some point in time. I also think for people who are looking for a lineage, which means not just a bunch of information, but a practitioner-specific based approach where you get to see a practitioner work with clients. You get to hear how a practitioner has prioritized different techniques and why. You're going to get a structured, spiritually grounded focus at Nightlight as well, where if you're looking for someone who practices astrology but also values grounded everyday spiritual practice, that's Nightlight. If you want a community that's been in the industry for a long time now, this is our 16th year of teaching programs and guiding students through trainings. So all of those things, if they matter to you, this is a great place to study. It's a warm community atmosphere. It's spiritually grounded. It's focused. It's academically rigorous. It's going to provide you the appropriate preparation for practicing professionally, especially if you go through all of our programs. But also for those who are just curious and love astrology for your own personal interest, this is going to be a great place for you to learn and grow and thrive and feel like you have a lot of support around you in the curriculum, the teachers, the community, as you're developing, what might just be a personal interest or spiritual hobby. So that is who it's ideal for. Finally, how you register. You go over to the website. I'm going to take you back there. And it's at the bottom of the first year page. You're going to find that the early bird rate is in effect until October 24th. You can save significantly off the cost of the course when you use the early bird rate, where you can pay in full, or use an early bird installment rate plan. Both are going to save you off significantly off the cost of the course. But also at Nightlight, it has always been our mission to make sure that astrological education is accessible for everyone. So please, if you are someone who would love to take this course, but maybe you can only afford a small amount of tuition per month, use the tuition assistance. It is there. All you got to do is apply. You fill out the little form. You tell us your situation. If you're on a fixed income, if you're on a limited income, if you're part-time, if you're in between jobs, if you don't make a lot and you're on that fixed budget, we understand. We don't want people to hurt themselves trying to study something that is spiritual that we feel should be very accessible for everybody. So if you're someone who could use a little help to make this program happen, for whatever reason, maybe you're a single parent or you're on disability or you're retired or you're on a fixed income, whatever the case is, use that tuition assistance. Also, people in other countries who have extreme, exchange rates. We get it. So just use the tuition assistance and we'll be glad to make sure that the price point is accessible. For us, as a spiritual topic, we're a business at the end of the day, but we believe that this is a spiritual topic. And so accessibility has been a part of our model for 16 years now. We've never not had one of our training programs with affordable sliding scale based prices for people who need it. So please take advantage of that. It's all there for you. I hope to see you in classes soon. And if you have any questions about the program whatsoever, direct them to us at info@nightlightastrology.com. And yeah, I hope to see you all coming up here in November. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.